Good morning, and welcome back to the Reckon Interview Live. I'm your host, John Hammontree, and today we are chatting with Ramzee Robinson about player activism in college football and the NFL. Ramzee is a graduate of the University of Alabama. He played cornerback for the Alabama Crimson Tide. He was drafted by the Detroit Lions, and now he is player engagement manager for the Kansas City Chiefs. Ramzee, thanks for coming on.
Hey, good morning, John. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I miss Alabama, so if this is the closest I can get to home, I'm all for it. So thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you on the show, and we hope you get to come back real soon. This is a live show, so anybody who's watching, if you have questions for Ramzee, please submit them in the comments. Ramzee, to start, while people are tuning in, why don't you tell us a little bit about what a player engagement manager does? I don't know if it's something that most people have heard of.
Absolutely. Player engagement department powered by the National Football League office. All 32 teams have and obtain a player engagement department itself. And in our positions, our focus is personal development of the players and coaches, and also professional development of both. And each team has a specific philosophy on how to go about accomplishing that and helping the players and coaches be able to reach their goals. So specifically here in Kansas City, my philosophy is providing that individual approach, treating and respecting each football member as their own individual, uniquely to themselves. And from there, just building out programs from a more generalized approach of the collective based upon what the needs are with that specific year, because each year the locker rooms change, turnover is high in this league. So being in the player engagement space, we tend to be the medium between the player, coach coming in, or even just managing their professional career as it pertains to that and their families, the community, the organization. So essentially, in this space, we are, one that helps the player and coach extend their voice, extend their reach on whatever it is they're looking to accomplish.
Well, and you mentioned that each year is very different from previous years. I would imagine that there's been no year quite like this season. You guys kicked off the season last week in Thursday Night Football against the Houston Texans. And this was a season that a lot of people weren't necessarily sure would happen because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was also a season that was sort of signaling a new spirit of activism, not necessarily for the players. The players have been active for a while, but for the league itself. Thursday night started with the Texans and the Chiefs locking arms in a show of unity in the middle of the field. Can you walk us through what went on behind the scenes to get to that point last week?
Absolutely. Of course, very complex in regards to, as you touched on, no year is going to be a year like 2020 for all of us, but specifically in the space of the National Football League, the Kansas City Chiefs. Just to get to Thursday night's game last week, first I just want to point out how responsive the league was, also the organization, to the current events that have been transpiring amongst us all. So I also, want to commend just the players, not only just with the Chiefs, but across the league. And just nowadays, yes, it is competitive on the field once the ball is snapped. But prior to that, these guys are close, in relationship. They converse, they have thought-provoking conversations. So to get to the point of even just unity, locking arms with the opposing team. I give the credit to our leaders of our team here, reaching out to the leaders of the Texans. And, nowadays you just pick up a phone, you can text and have a conversation. So that's what our guys did. They conducted a dialogue via text and bounced a few ideas off of each other and what they thought what would work, what would make sense. But in making that decision, it's a tough decision, John, because they're not only just thinking about they're not really thinking about themselves. They're really thinking about the community and how best they can get that message across. So I commend both sides on their ability to put aside the idea of looking to play the game to win it when it comes to that particular space of how they wanted to display unity. And that's one thing about our team is big on unity. That is their message this year, is bringing everyone together for a common goal, and that is to have equality. So the guys made a decision right before, I want to say right before, um, 20 hours before kickoff, actually. Like, it was right to the midnight hour where guys finally agreed that that would be the best decision to make. And that's what we were able to see guys kind of take that action.
Now, this season, the NFL elected that in addition to the national anthem, they were going to play Lift Every Voice and Sing for at least all of the first week's games. And in addition to that, some of the players, the Texans, chose to stay in the locker room. The Chiefs stayed on the field for both songs. There was a moment that I think grabbed a lot of people's attention, and it was during the display of unity where some members of the crowd booed. And it certainly wasn't booing because anybody was kneeling during national anthem. It wasn't booing anything other than a display of unity. And my understanding is on the scoreboard there were some phrases such as Black Lives Matter showing at that time. How did the players react to the booing, and how has the community reacted to the booing?
Yes, we'll start with the community. And I'll put it in context even to the best that I'm able to. Disclosure here is I'm not an expert. I am just one that works very hard in my position and do the best I can to educate myself and provide my own opinion. So understand that before I even kind of dive into this thing, because this is a great topic. So put it in context, I would say it starts with just the power and influence of social media and technology. I mean, we're at a point now in our lives where, communication, images, audio can be pushed so fast, so rapidly. And in doing that, that information is processed by everyone that views it and that sees it. And that process, so that interpretation is based upon that person and their historically just what and how they've been conditioned to make decisions on what they see. So with that being said, the community. So the community itself, most that I spoke with, they were pretty much upset, significantly bothered, extremely uncomfortable. Some, after the fact, was struggling with the notion of, will I feel safe going to games? And I'm speaking more so from just, my own conversations that I've been able to have. And with that being said, I decided on my own to just do additional review by going in and just seeing who else in the community was kind of speaking about it. And even just, some of our leaders within the community here of Kansas City, even Mayor Quentin Lucas, kind of pointed out that, first of all, he acknowledged it, that it was in fact booing. And then from there, he kind of touched on helping, the readers at least have an idea of, well, that doesn't necessarily represent, the Kansas Cityans. That doesn't represent, the community of Kansas City. Like, it's more representatives here, more residents here that he believes, and I believe, we all believe, that feel otherwise when it comes to seeing unity and having an issue with it. So with the community, I would say it was high in responsiveness. A lot of energy there on how people felt and what they saw. Players, to be candid, they didn't notice it.
That's interesting.
They didn't think much about it in that moment. And even talking to them, a day after, it was more so for them, really coming to learn that it occurred, and from there, kind of deciding, how they felt about it. So it was different, on both sides. And all due respect for the players, their focus in that moment is having that moment of silence. It's really taking in just what's most important to them before kickoff. So they're in
Yeah.
a different headspace, when it comes to focus and where they're at in that moment. So I understood that, coming from them. And right, prior to just making, giving my feedback, putting it in context of technology, that's something that each individual just has to, or in their best interest, consider doing. Is just really looking at it from a credibility lens and decide for yourself, what you saw, what you heard, because even our chairman CEO's wife, she made a point, Tavia Hunt, that it was more so booing from when the Houston Texans came out on the football field.
Right.
And that's a valid point too. So you get so many perspectives off of a 20-second video,
Mm-hmm.
but that's all the video images that, we're in a day and age now that, we're going to find ourselves managing to the best of our ability.
Now, you guys won that game. Congratulations. This week you will have your first road game. Can we anticipate and expect similar levels of activism and involvement throughout the rest of the season, or was it sort of a one-off week one occurrence, you think?
The league's initiative is to push, the envelope of acknowledging, social injustices. One rollout that will still continue is the helmet decals. On the back of players that choose to participate, you will see the names of victims that were affected by, social injustice experiences. And with those names, players will have the opportunity to share the story of that victim and make it about the victim, the victim's family. The league is even going to support those families, the children, with continued education. So, John, the goal is to continue, to raise awareness in this space because it affects so many. I'm one that comes from the Black community, and I've experienced it. And here I am, coming to work every day, because some people go to jobs where, I assume, and also some I've spoken with, that they're not really able to have conversations. They're not really able to really highlight the areas that affect them. They just go to work and, and they go home and then they have those conversations. But with me, when I come into work each day, it's something that is on my list of priorities on managing in a way that can communicate to others. So the goal is to continue, with raising awareness in any capacity possible. And, what better platform than the National Football League?
Let's talk a little bit about some of the issues and causes that motivate players and that motivate you. Obviously a team is a massive collection of people from all over the country, in some instances all over the world. They're not necessarily all going to be driven by the same causes. We have seen the league take on bigger causes in the past. Right now, obviously, we're talking about social justice, but in the past, they've also taken on issues for veterans, issues for breast cancer awareness, things like that. But in the locker room, part of your responsibility, as I understand it, is to answer questions about causes and concerns that players have. What really is on players' minds this year, and then also if you could talk a little bit about the work that you've done. I know that you also have partnered with Alabama Appleseed here in Alabama to raise awareness on social justice issues. So what are some issues that are important to you, and then what are issues that are important in the locker room?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the locker room first. With our locker room, when you ask about, what areas are highest on their list of concern, honestly, the areas extend themselves. There's quite a few. What I can tell you is that more than I've ever seen is guys really coming to me and really wanting to do something. Wanting to either promote their foundation, and within their foundation, the work that they're doing, just wanting more people to be aware of what they're doing. Guys that have already been doing work. In addition to that, there's been players that are looking to identify organizations, 501c3s, foundations that are there to they could partner with based upon the cause and the initiative of the organization. But the areas that we're focused on as an organization, we're focusing on education, for sure. Really helping and giving towards Black-owned businesses. Um, the criminal justice reform is one as well that the league gave all teams an opportunity to support, um, and just workforce, economic, economic development, and just really identifying areas that can use the help in that space. I'm really proud of our locker room when it comes to the guys that have foundations that uh, are using their platform in powerful ways. So this locker room, I would say, is doing a pretty good job, of really putting the work in, like following where their hearts are, following what their voice is on what they want to do and they want to accomplish, are actually, doing the work. With myself, it was interesting that you asked about me because, being at my age, being a millennial, and I say that because my upbringing and my focus was really just trying to establish myself, establish my family, and just having that focus on accomplishment and success and whatever that means to anyone else. But for me, it meant, going to college. It meant being able to get a degree. It meant, establishing a career for myself. And I say that because once I start to also notice a lot of the activity that was going on, and again, through social media, because it's so highlighted, I was wondering, what I was one of those asking, what can I do, about Black Lives Matter movement? What can I do about, showing how I'm concerned? And I believe that I work hard. I believe that I'm very passionate. So what is going to work for me? I don't know where to start. It's kind of where I was this spring and going into the summer. So long story short, Tracy Perlman, she's a senior vice president of communications and marketing of the National Football League. She also in her department supports active players and former players. And me being a former player and part of a correspondence list, she provided me information on opportunities to be an advocate. And it stuck out so simple for me. The Alabama Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. And it was a no-brainer for me. When I read the subject line of urgent opportunity to be an advocate, and then saw it was based out of the state of Alabama, state of which I'm from, and then the focus specifically in this area of, just the criminal, justice system, prison system to be specific. So I partner with Alabama Appleseed, the director, Carla Crowder. Carla is the Andy Reid of the Alabama Appleseed organization. You talk about vision, someone that's born to do it, someone that is constantly trying to find creative ways to help, to really provide that equal opportunity for all Alabamians. That's what Carla is about. So when I had a chance to meet her, it was almost like I was on a recruiting visit all over again. And just to get to the point, I was sold, on her passion, on her ambition, and her desire. Then I had a chance to meet Akeisha as well, who works in the policy space within the organization. So meeting them two, I'm on board with being a voice, as it pertains to combating the prison system in Alabama, because it's beyond belief for me as far as how much of a challenge and how much an issue it is and has been, for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I think it's fair to say that the league's approach this year is very different from the league's approach even in the last couple of years. A few years ago when Colin Kaepernick first took a knee during the national anthem to protest police brutality, the league reacted very differently. For several seasons, he was kind of ostracized, persona non grata. It was hard for him to find a team. He still hasn't found a team. I think it's encouraging to see that the league has changed its approach. Do you think that it's lasting, and do you think that it's genuine and enough?
that's my hope, is that it's lasting. The genuine component of it, I don't know. I don't know because I'm not part of those meetings. When it comes to what the response is going to be. I'm on the other end of it, on the result of what those meetings have led to.
Mhm.
It was tough. Seeing how Kaepernick was treated after the fact, and that's the thing about change and lacking in understanding. When a person doesn't understand, or a group doesn't understand, why someone is doing what they're doing, taking action or whatever that may be, especially one that that it's about the human being in a way that it's to care for another, a way that it is to help someone else. It was tough to see that, but on the other hand, here we are, because he did that, because he, lack of a better framework, gave up what he loved, playing a game, uh, and he gained so much.
Mhm.
Uh, Maybe not personally for himself, but he gained. What we see is a response. Everyone seems to be trying. Is what I see. Everyone seems to be trying based upon what they are in their current roles of leadership, and I have to maintain hope, that it'll continue, because it's too easy for me to look at it from the lens of negativity and just see it as if it's just propaganda, or see it as it's just advertising. Because all I know is what I know, and that is the players that I'm able and fortunate to work with. They're actually doing something behind the scenes. Kind of when I touched on even just with the conversation to display unity. Me personally, for myself, I'm actually doing something. And to me, that's what's most important, is each and every one of us decide for yourself what makes sense to you, where your heart is in this, if it matters to you, and decide from there, what it is that you believe that you can do to kind of show where you stand in all of this. Because one thing we've come to learn, we meaning the league and Kansas City Chiefs, our organization, through just continued programming, when you think about the term anti-racism, uh, that's a term that I haven't really heard, but never really heard often, in
Mhm.
30 years of my life. But being introduced to that term and understanding it, you're going to stand on one side of this whole matter, whether you like it or not. Either you'll stand on the side of identifying racism, dismantling racism from a structured, peaceful approach, or you're gonna stand on the side of just throw your hands up and saying I'm not gonna say anything, I'm not gonna do anything. But even in that stance, either or, you make a decision. Either you are against it or you're for it. There's really no gray area, and I had to come to understand that even personally for myself. So, John, I'm gonna stay hopeful. I'm gonna continue to do the work that I can, through Alabama Appleseed, because the prison system in Alabama is a huge problem. And when you talk about $2.6 billion to be spent on expanding the prison system
Yeah.
that's already, ruled unconstitutional, that's an issue.
Now, we've talked a lot about NFL football. Something that I think is near and dear to both of our hearts is, of course, college football. And college football has changed a lot since you graduated in 2007. Obviously, you were there just before Nick Saban arrived on campus. But I couldn't have imagined 10 years ago Nick Saban leading a Black Lives Matter rally, or putting out videos with, written by players stating emphatically that Black Lives Matter. How has college football changed in this regard since you were a player?
These kids are so smart, John. What is it? Let's see. If I'm a millennial, what are they? iGens, Generation Z, whatever that
Whatever they
is.
are, yeah.
Yeah, they've always had the exposure to digital technology. So when you talk about information, and being able to find ways to express themselves, these kids are so smart. They're so ambitious, and they're very diverse, you know, in that regard. So I'm super proud because I was not thinking about this stuff in college, man. I was trying to figure out my next, you know, if I was going to order Domino's that weekend again, using my, you know, my little stipend card. You know, I was more so trying to figure out what I was going to order, you know, to eat, or, you know, what my buddies were doing. These kids are so impressive. And with that being said, I just believe from what I've seen, based on Coach Saban's response to it, he's been listening to them. You know, he's been taking heed to how they feel and what they think, and you know, he's provided leadership around the guys to kind of help them express themselves. So when I saw the march, I was blown away in a positive way. Like, I was so happy about it, because at the end of the day, something shifted to where at least they were out marching. Players had a voice, players had a certain feeling about something, and that's what they did, you know, and everyone can look at it from, again, whatever lens that they choose to do so. But what I saw was someone listening to those kids, and those kids really speaking up enough and candidly enough to receive the help that they needed to at least express themselves. What they're doing after that, that's most important, of course. But just to kick it off in that regard, man, these kids, they're doing some really great work, and I'm excited to just continue to be a witness to it all.
Well, we've talked through a lot of really serious issues. I just got a text from a buddy. He asked me to ask about this. So we've talked about a lot of topics that are very relevant. Let's talk about Mr. Irrelevant.
I knew you was going there.
And what that experience was like, being drafted as Mr. Irrelevant in 2007. You know, it's a fun honor. Is that something that you keep in contact with other Mr. Irrelevants in future drafts and things like that?
I did keep contact with the Mr. Irrelevants that followed me. I think the last one I was tracking was Suck Up, was a kicker. But for, you know, Mr. Irrelevant, where do I start? How about this? All right, being in California and being in Orange County, you know, they did a parade for me that I was excited about, you know, initially, but the way it played out, you know, I was told I was going to be a millionaire. I remember I was told they was going to shower me with gifts. So how about the millionaire piece? I ended up like some really smart banker brought me some check that I was able to sign, but the writing and the language only allowed me to maybe have $1. But I don't know, somehow it made sense to be a millionaire for a day. Like, it was ridiculous. It was a tease.
Oh, no.
And the showering of gifts. No, John, it wasn't showering of gifts. It was it's almost like a yard sale concept, where people could just, like, anything they didn't want to keep, they could just donate it, and it was going to go to me. So
that's hilarious.
It was a lot of fun. You know what I mean? Like, we had a good time with it. So being out there and the support that I received from the community, that was inspiring. The draft itself was painful. It was by far one of the longest drafts. Sure. When you talk about 7 rounds, one of the longest drafts in NFL history. I do believe, I haven't done the specialists that could do the research on that. After the draft of 2007, they changed the timing of each round, you know, on, like, let's pick this thing up a little bit. So I wasn't part of the expedited draft. I was part of the long, drawn out draft. So it was fun. It was a fun experience, and I used that to kind of catapult myself into making a team in Detroit.
Well, thanks, Ramzee, for your time today. Thank you for the work that you do. Good luck to the Kansas City Chiefs in trying to repeat their Super Bowl winning season. Roll Tide. And for those of you who are watching who are interested in more on this conversation, please go download the latest episode of the Reckon Interview podcast. We talked with John Talty and Kiese Lehman also about activism in college football and the NFL and how sports has changed for good. And Ramzee, thanks again.
Thank you so much, John, for the opportunity. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.